This is the U-Show podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the U-Show podcast. I'm Chris Treft alongside Ben Gisselson. And Ben, we got a great show lined up today. Coming up later on in the show, we have John Cooper and Jeff Blashill, so that's for sure going to be a blast to talk to those guys. But first things first, it was a shortened season. A lot of crazy stuff happened, and, we're not going to have a Clark Cup champion, but the league crowned an Anderson Cup champion, and much deserved. It goes to the Chicago Steel.
Record-breaking is an understatement for the year, even though they did break records. But, every time you looked, and obviously as a play-by-play announcer in the USHL, you look at scoreboards a lot. Every time I looked, the Chicago Steel were scoring 7 goals a game, scoring 8 goals a game. But then the other thing that always stood out to me was they were winning 7-1 or 8-2. It wasn't winning 7-8 or 8-7, 9-8 all the time. They really had a mix of just about everything you could ask for. Obviously, Victor Ostman in goal having a great year. Owen Power on the blue line, who I only got to see once, although I've heard he might be potentially a top 5, top 10 pick coming up. He's not even draft eligible yet, and he had the year that he had. 2022 is when his draft year is. Thank you, Brent, for that. I saw the 2-2 come up on Zoom there. Brent Meske, our producer behind the scenes, you might call him. He's the one that runs this whole show.
Brent, that was very Meske of you to get that to us.
And then you look up front. I think it was at the end of the year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure the top 3 scorers, 3 of the top 4 in the league, all wore Steel logos. And I know they had 6 in the top 20 just about all season. Those are just bananas numbers. And so I know we talked about it off the air, Chris. We were saying of all the years to potentially have a disputed Anderson Cup like we're having to have this year, you almost couldn't have picked a better year for this to happen, because there didn't seem to be a whole lot of dispute as to that the Chicago Steel were going to get the job done, though that may ruffle some feathers in the midst of Waterloo or Dubuque, who I know were also having great seasons, but it just didn't seem like anybody was going to catch Chicago, at least in the regular season.
You can try to dispute those facts, but they were still both 15 points back of Chicago. 41-7-1-0, 83 points in 49 games. They had 242 goals for. The second best team had 184. They had 5 of the top 6 scorers. Just incredible. Dise Fowl had 60 and 49. Brisson had 59 and 45. Colangelo was third with 58 and 44. If you take away the Jackson twins and then Alex Campbell for Omaha, who came out of nowhere late, the Predators draft pick, at one point, the top 5 scorers in the league was Chicago Steel. Their top 6 forwards were just unbelievable. Then you have Owen Power on the back end. Those numbers are absolutely incredible. And I think that there's 2 stats that stood out to me the most. And one is they only had 2 regulation losses on the road all season. On the road, 2 regulation losses. And then they had 2 13-game winning streaks, 2 separate. And they were currently on a 13-game winning streak when the league ended. And who knows if that would have ever stopped. They could have went on to win 30 in a row, or however many games were left. That's how unbelievable they were. So you can, there might be somebody that says it's undisputed, but you really can't argue against Chicago in these circumstances being awarded the Anderson Cup. It was remarkable.
Congratulations, and well-deserved. No doubt about it.
For sure. Without further ado, we said no Clark Cup champions were awarded this year, but we have 2 Clark Cup champions joining us here soon. And this is for sure going to be a great interview. You got 2 guys that have won at every level they both came to the USHL. They were there for 2 seasons. They won a cup, and then they moved on, rightfully so. They're both now in the NHL, so I'm excited for this one.
2 guys that, as you mentioned, that's the calling card for Jeff Blashill, for John Cooper. In my mind, it's that they've won everywhere.
All right, guys, it's time to switch things up and head to what you've all been waiting for. Our special guests. We have more than one for our big debut episode here, and why not go in with a big splash here? We have 2 former Clark Cup champions, 2 American League Calder Cup champions, both as coaches. John Cooper from the Tampa Bay Lightning, Jeff Blashill from the Detroit Red Wings. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
no problem. So first off, You guys have had a little downtime here, a little bit different, unprecedented times with everything going on right now. We'll start with John. What have you been up to?
Wow, I wish I had an answer that was going to be different than probably every other podcast that's been going on. But the one thing is, we're pretty fortunate to be in Tampa, Florida, just in the sense that we've abided by the social distancing and really haven't gone out too far. But on the positive side of things, it hasn't rained a drop in the month of March. The weather's really nice, so to be able to go outside and like walk or ride your bike, it's pretty easy to do. And so to get that outdoor time, even though like there's nobody really around, I think it's probably been a little bit of advantage being in, a warmer state. But the one thing is, I've always, when you're in the NHL, and Blash can attest to this too, your basic, there's 3 days. It's game day, practice day, off day. You don't know if it's Tuesday or if it's Friday. You don't know if it's the weekend or midweek. There's none of that in the league. And it goes for 9-10 months, if you're really, really lucky. But you lose a lot of your life, your family life. And so in this regard, I'll be honest, like to be this close with, I have 3 pretty young kids, 11 and 9, to be with them as much as we are, like I've never got to experience it, especially at the age they're at now. So it's been a lot of fun. And so in that respect of things, it's been a great experience.
Jeff, you're in not as quite of a warm area, but still, same question to you. What you been up to?
Well, I'd start by, I'd echo a little bit of what Coop said. I mean, rarely do you get the chance to spend family time. And even with that, a lot of times, your kids want to go do things with other people. And in this case, we can't. So we've had a movie pretty much most nights. We've had a family movie night, working our way through the Rocky series right now. I think Rocky 4 is up tonight. So now my 9-year-old now wants to be a boxer. So,
that's good. That's perfect.
Yeah, with his grades, it might actually work just fine for him. So, but it's actually been awesome. We've watched The Natural, we watched the Russian 5, and now we're into this Rocky thing. So we'll go through we're going to skip Rocky 5. As Coop told me the other day, it's the worst movie ever made. So now we're going to go after that right to the Creeds, and I've never seen them. So, to be able to get some of that family time is awesome. It's just something that I don't think we ever get, but we certainly don't get during the season. And then, it's just, for Michigan standards, it's been just barely nice enough. And we've had, the one thing, when you're not spoiled like Coop down in Tampa, if you get a day and it's 50 and the sun shines a little bit, you get outside as fast as you can. So we've done that too. But certainly it's an interesting time. I mean, it's the days, the first week it happened, it was I almost woke up, you didn't know what you were doing the rest of the day. I almost had that. The one good thing for us, our kids are in distance learning right now. They go to Catholic school and they're in a distance learning. At least there's some structure to the day, because the first week I don't know if I could have put up with much more of that.
Hey, let's circle back. Hold on. Let's circle back here to the Rockies. So the Rocky 1 to me is one of the top 5 movies of all time. Like it's awesome.
Obviously.
And as we get going, Rocky 5, I couldn't believe how the series gone from one of the greatest ever to the worst. Like that movie, it resonates to me as I want that hour and 45 minutes back of my life that I'm not going to get back. But Rocky 2, I'll never forget, this is going to date me a little bit, was the first time I think I ever went to a movie theater by myself, without parents or whatever. And it was young. I think we rode our bikes to the theater, and we went to Rocky 2, like so fired up to see it. And the power went out.
No way.
I was so choked. I was like, you waited, because like at the time that movie was so popular. Like everybody was waiting for Rocky 2 to come out and see what happened. And I was so pissed, like 15 minutes in and the power went out. And so we got our money back and I couldn't go back for like ever. But
so
anyway.
Did you ever go back to see Rocky 2 in theater then, or did you have to wait?
I had to wait, but we went back to see it. They gave us like a voucher to come back. But it took me like few weeks to come back. And then by then everybody's told me what happened. So I was rattled. But yeah, that was my Rocky. And now when we go play the Flyers, have you done this? I don't know if you've done it, but we've had the fun nights where we took the cab to run up the steps and take a picture with Rock.
The difference between me and Coop is I've actually run from the hotel to that step, run up the stairs and took the picture.
There is a lot of truth, yeah.
So that's the difference. Just so you guys know.
In Tampa, we took a limo.
John, we were thrilled when you were going to come on with us when we got the okay from you. And we were even more thrilled when you mentioned that Jeff from Detroit was willing to join us as well. You guys have had pretty analogous careers coaching-wise. Obviously, the USHL, you guys had some bouts, which we're going to get into here today. AHL, you guys both had great success in the AHL and now in the NHL. Again, that similar trajectory. But where did the friendship begin for you guys? Because clearly, as we've already learned early in this podcast, you guys get along quite well.
Hey, Ben, before Coop answers that, what was that word you used?
Analogous? Too
Analogous.
big?
Okay, Coop, let me know what that means.
But you circled back. You said it properly this time. The first time you make sure, Chris, keep it in the first one.
Okay, no editing there. That one's raw.
No, it was a big analog. That's 4 syllables. That's big time.
We only have 4 of those per broadcast, all right? So you guys got to calm down after this.
You go ahead, Coop.
Well, I don't know if we have conflicting stories because I'm not going to remember the exact establishment we were in. I remember who we were with. I think we're Todd, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm trying to think exactly. So now we're screwing this story up, but I was coaching like junior B, I think.
Yeah.
For the Metro Jets. And you, were you with Miami then, or?
I would have been at Ferris.
Yeah, you would have been at Ferris.
Yeah.
And so Todd Watson, he was coaching CompuWare in the North American League at the time. And it was just like, hey, Blash was there and somebody said I should go meet him. And anyway, we went up to this late night establishment, had a little bit of fun, and kind of, it's one of those situations where you were somebody you don't really know, but you had a lot of fun with. We kind of hit it off right away. And ever since that night, that was probably in 2001, maybe. We've been buddies ever since, even though we weren't even close. Like, I was in a league where he wouldn't even be recruiting out of our league. And, but we always found ourselves in the same circles because we were actually probably recruiting the same type of player. I was trying to get guys to play for me and eventually go on. And I was promoting guys to go to the North American League or go to the USHL and then Blash. So we always found ourselves in the same circles, but it's funny how our paths, our trajectories have gone different ways, but kind of met back with each other. And I always say one of the cool things, I'm jumping all over the place now, but for us, our names follow each other both on the Clark Cup and the Calder Cup. And I think, for 2 pretty good friends, it's pretty cool to be a part of.
Yeah, that part's for sure. It was one of those things, I think, when Coop and I met, you just know when you meet people that are real similar. And we've just, actually, I think his, I don't know if you call him half brother, but number 3, I think, said something about like idiots know when idiots meet each other. And so we've gravitated towards each other. We actually coached a couple teams back when you coached Michigan, when you take districts would go play in the national festivals. And so we'd take Team Michigan and we'd go play in the national festival for the 16-year-old festival and the 17-year-old festival. So we coached a couple teams that way together, and that probably grew our friendship, especially professionally then. And it is crazy. Like, we were always, we were at different levels, doing different things until the USHL. We ended up going to the USHL at the same time, and basically not the American League the same time and not the NHL the same time, but similar time periods. And so it's been interesting rides for sure.
Before we talk USHL, John, I wanted to ask you, because I was hoping you would know and you wouldn't have to make me do all the research to figure this out. You spent, was it 11 years before your coaching career as a public defender? You got your law degree and then moved over into coaching. Do you know, are you the only NHL head coach that has a law degree in the history of the NHL? Do you know that?
Okay, well, I wasn't quite 11 years. I practiced law for 5 years. And I was it's a pretty well-known story, judge in Michigan that helped me out when I first got into coaching to coach his kids' high school team. But I'm not the only lawyer. I think Pete DeBoer, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's an attorney. But then after that, Blash, I don't know if it isn't.
The one that came to my mind was Pete DeBoer. I knew Pete DeBoer was.
Yeah.
Is a lawyer, was an attorney or whatever. So I don't know other than that. It wouldn't surprise me if there was other guys. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, there's for sure guys that have had master's degrees and stuff like that. But the lawyer path, I just know Pete and I apologize out there if there's other guys, but I don't know who they are.
Does that law degree come in handy when you're talking to the referees?
So the one thing about the refs, they're always right. But I'm always right. I'm always right too. So people always ask me that question though, like, what has the law degree done for you in the world of hockey? And yeah, like I can't, sit here and recite cases, to people and stuff like that. But it really, I think the biggest thing, it helped me with my public speaking and, because I did trials, I did, moot court and stuff like that in law school. And you're having to get up in front of the class and you're having to argue points and do things like that. And there is a little bit of there's similarities when you're addressing your team. And anybody that addresses and gets into public speaking areas knows it can be a little bit unnerving. And when I first started doing it, I'll be honest, you get the sweaty palms, you're nervous and you don't want to screw up and embarrass yourself in front of people. But that was a big education for me because now, I'm not saying I'm not nervous now, but it's way different. I can jump up in front of people now and you don't really care as much as what you say. But a lot of that was because of, I think, my education in law school.
So John, you made your way to coaching via the courtroom. Jeff, you made your way via a little bit more of the, I don't know if you want to call it orthodox route, but not quite as unique. But you were a player, you were a goaltender. Before you coached in the USHL, you played in the USHL in Des Moines and actually won a Clark Cup there and an Anderson Cup there. Memories of Buccaneer Arena, that building is pretty historic. I think everybody here has had at least an experience with it in some way, shape, or form. What does your memory bring you back to when you think about that building, Jeff?
Great times. Great. I spent 3 years there and it was awesome. It really was. It was when I first
You won the Clark Cup there?
I was on the team. I was going
to say, what was this? You must have had a really high octane offense.
Grant Fuhr style.
Exactly. I always say this, like I got into coaching. I got a head start in coaching because I was a bad goalie at Ferris, but that's neither here nor there. No, you know what? Des Moines was awesome. I mean, it was, I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and to think at that time that I was going to further my hockey career by moving to Des Moines, Iowa, didn't make sense at first. I didn't really know a lot about the USHL. And Bob Ferguson, we were a protected team by Bob Ferguson's coach Buccaneers. And Bob came up during our states and talked to about 7 of us. And I ended up being one of the guys that went. And Des Moines is an incredible city for those that haven't been there. It's an awesome, awesome city. We had it rolling at that time. We had really, really good teams. I was a part of 3 years of all 3 years, really good teams. The building was rocking every night. Crazy Larry was hammering away on the garbage can. Let's go Bucks. Sioux City sucks. I mean, I think of that. I think that's one of my passwords today is Sioux City sucks. So it was awesome. I met a family. I played with Nick Kruger, the Kruger family is a real prominent family in Des Moines, Iowa, in terms of hockey. And there's 5 brothers. I think all played for the Bucks. Well, I know they did. And They're 5 of my real good friends this day, and Don and Kathy were real good friends. I lived with the Bolden family, and they were great, great, great people to me. So awesome. It was an incredible league. The league was really humming then too, as it is now. For a young guy to go in and play in front of 4,000 every night in Des Moines and 6,000 plus in Omaha, and it was awesome. It was a really, really enjoyable time.
That was a tough place to play too. Like I just coached there against, but that was the fans are right on top of you and they're just screaming, and like that was a tough place to go into.
So
And
John,
Cooper, like when I played, like, man, it was packed every night. So you think of that place with I think it was like 4,200 max, and every single night it was packed. And it was Bob Ferguson was a great coach for us. I mean, he was really incredible.
Yeah, Fergie's good.
John, your pre-coaching career as a player, what can you tell me about the Legal Eagles?
So when I left college, I went out east and I played lacrosse there, and I played 1 year on the club team for hockey, and then I was done. And when I ended up going to law school, believe it or not, the law school had a hockey team. So it was like club hockey team, and it was a blast to play on. I met some great people I'm still friends with today. Because you have the things about law school is in itself, just the education is grueling in itself, but it had a lot of like fun sports you could play. And one of them, they had an ice hockey team, and the law school team played in like the best, men's league in East Lansing, of which case there was a team called the Legal Eagles, and it was all the lawyers in town and judges. And so when we would play in the league, and at the time, I guess it was maybe a little bit better player, and it wasn't too hard on the law school club team to be one of the better players. So they, when they found out I was staying in the town for a little bit, they were like, "Hey, we want you to come play on the lawyer team." And I looked at it not only to play men's league, it was a ton of fun, as everybody knows that plays, but I thought it was a night, oh man, I could get some major connections here. And eventually I did. And that actually was part of how it led me into where I am sitting today, because of the judges and lawyers I've met there. And I'm still close with a bunch of them still today. But boy, we had a blast. And it was not a bad place, guys, to play with, in the sense that we had a ton of fun, and you always knew that if you got in trouble, you were going to get out of it. So it was good.
So, John, how do you go from, we've been talking about all this other stuff and, a different path to the National Hockey League. How do you go from the Legal Eagles to coaching the Tampa Bay Lightning? Obviously, it's a different and crazy route.
Well, that was different. I played with those guys maybe a year or two, but I slowly was getting out of it because I was working so much. And then I got into coaching. So when the judge was on the team that ran the Legal Eagles, he needed a coach for his kids' high school hockey team, the Lansing Catholic Central. He asked myself and Pat Murray. And Pat Murray he was playing with us. He was getting his master's degree, played at Michigan State, played for the Flyers a little bit. I needed that job to get the job at the district court. And so we coached that team, had a blast. It was 1999. It was the year Maple Leaf Gardens closed. And the judge, we jumped in a school bus, took our team, and we went to Toronto just so we could rent the ice out and skate at Maple Leaf Gardens. Phenomenal experience, had a blast. But I was working practicing law 60, 70 hours a week. I was coaching like 20, wasn't getting paid to do it. And you're doing that. And I coached 1 year there. Then I go and I'm a part-time assistant with the Capital Center Pride. Then I go and coach the Metro Jets in Detroit. And then I'm coaching Honey Baked. It was 4 years of just coaching hockey. I didn't have time to play. So I was really done my playing days, even in men's league. And what happened to me was I'm now coaching, I was working 60 hours a week, coaching 10, 20. And then it started turning into I was coaching 60 hours a week. and I was only working like 20, and I had to figure out, so I got to find a way to get paid for this. And, that's when I ended up meeting some guys and going to the North American Hockey League. But, that's kind of the process I took. It was more the coaching that got me there than anything else.
So I want to fast forward. You guys knew each other through the hockey world, which we all know is just minuscule. But the first time you're ever together on the same set of benches, let's just say, is the USHL. And there are two specific series I want to talk about: Eastern Conference Finals 2009, Eastern Conference Finals 2010. Same two teams in the East: Green Bay, where you were at, John, and then, of course, Indiana, where Jeff was at. Let's start with 2009 and how that series wound up. Jeff, will you take us through your viewpoint on the 2009 Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, I mean, it's first off, I think to get there, we had a real tough series with Cedar Rapids. We went best of five, best of five, went to the fifth game. I think we won it with like 13 seconds left. I think Torrey Krug made a pass from below the goal line out to Shane Birchbeck with like 13 seconds left to win. And so then we ended up playing Coop's team. And I would say through a large part of that season, as my memory recalls, Coop's team had the better of us for a large part of that year. We had kind of made a couple trades at different times to try to help solidify our toughness a little bit more. They were tougher than us for sure, as I remember. And so we had to make a couple trades to kind of help solidify the toughness. And then we actually made a trade for Mike Seachy, who was playing for Tri-City at the time. And he was one of the best players in the league. And so that obviously really, really helped our team. And so we went into that series. And as I remember it, Coop, it was back and forth. Real tight. I think we might have won game one. You guys won game two. We went home, won game three. I think then we won game four, at home as well. And the thing about series is once momentum starts to go one way, that's kind of how it goes. It wasn't like it was those games were all super close and could have went either way. I don't remember, Coop, if that was the year we had the little brawl at the end of maybe game two. I think you had the boys fired up. We had a little brawl at the end of game two. You and I kind of looking at each other and then kind of ended up stopping it at some point. So it wasn't like really big, but that kind of deal. So I don't remember which year that was.
Big. It was big enough that we had to go on the ice. Yeah,
we had to go on the ice for sure. We're kind of looking at each other like, are we going to do something here? Are we going to let the refs figure this out? And finally we kind of nodded and went on the ice and broke it up and got our guys back. But there was a good I'd say competitive level between the two teams, and it developed into a really good rivalry for sure. And we came out on the better side of that one.
Yeah, it was one of those. We'd come into the league, and Green Bay was I think they had the worst record in the league the year we came in, and we made a few trades early. I think it was probably the difference. Blash made some trades late that really helped their team. We needed to make all these trades and do some things early in when we first came in. We brought a few guys from the North American League that I'd coached to the Robertson Cup Championship the year before. It just kind of had to change the culture, and we had become one of the big things. I mean, you really can't do it now, but we had this kind of mantra: if we couldn't beat you on the ice, we'd beat you up. And it worked kind of well for us for a long time. And we turned that year around. But the gap of where we took our team and where we ended up was huge. And I think we won the Anderson Cup that year.
Yeah, I think you won the Anderson Cup. Yeah, correct.
And then we got to the playoffs. We played Waterloo in the first round. And PK always has great teams, and we ended up, when Blash went to 5 games, like we took Waterloo out into 3, I believe.
Yeah. And
so we had a little bit of wait around time. We came in, we had home ice, and then Blash, they beat us in game 1. So at a best of 5, that's, now you're playing with fire a little bit. We came back, we win game 2. As Blash talked about, we had a little bit of the brawl at the end there. And then just as a game 5 is in game 7, that's the game 3 in a best of 5. They won it. Now our backs are against the wall. They're smelling it, and they took us out. And I couldn't sit here and say, we should have won that or anything like that. They played better than us. They were better than us at that time. And it was one of those, like, I hope, if you could play it all over again, the way it played out is how we wanted it to play out. But it was, frustrating at the time. But you're happy for your buddy. And so the one thing I remember talking to Jeff is like, well, you knocked us out. Now you might as well go and win it. They deservedly they ended up doing it.
Clark Cup Finals, Jeff. What's the first thing that comes to mind about that series? Is there a word that stands out to you to describe it best?
The one thing that I would say that I remember this day is we had, I think, gone up 2-1, so we were on the edge of winning it in Fargo. And my dad actually drove out, and so when we won it, our owner Paul Scott had my dad like standing right there by the bench. So when we won it, he was the first guy I got to hug, and that's a moment that was really, really, and anything that's happened in my career, that's as cool a moment as I've had. That's one thing. We lost game 1 in that series actually, and I remember we played super cautious, I thought. And I just remember talking to our guys about, I really felt we were the better team in that series. I think we were the better team in that series, the more talented team. Making sure we went out and we played to win and played without fear. And we did that the rest of the series, and we won that series. Really, for me, the finals, the 2 best teams were us and Green Bay. And you still got to go win the series for sure. But it was us in Green Bay, and the fact that we were able to knock them off, that gave us the confidence moving into the finals.
Green Bay didn't forget about it, though, did they? 2010, a different script to the Eastern Finals, right, John?
Yeah, it's crazy how it just came full circle. When you're the Anderson Cup champs and had the success we had, and then to lose out in the second round was obviously frustrating and something you kind of hang your hat on. We did a good job in the summer kind of building our team, solidified our goaltending. We built our back end, and but some of it's some of those game breakers that you pull in. And when we landed Anders Lee, who's now the captain of the New York Islanders, that was a big get for us. And we went through that year and kind of picked up where we left off the year before. And it's amazing how everything just kind of played out. We had some huge rivalries. I remember, I think I've got a picture of it up here. Our goaltender, Steve Summerhays, I think he fought the Chicago goaltender 3 times, 3 different occasions that year. One of them being in the shootout. I've never seen that before. Like the shootout went on and they went and fought each other during the shootout. So, but it was one of those years, and I don't know if Jeff, maybe we talk this later, is like you just feel like you've got the team. And we just felt like we had the team that year. And all of a sudden we get back to the playoffs again. We play Waterloo in the first round. We ended up taking them out and sweeping them again, and end up, I don't know, how did your first round go that year?
So it was interesting. I actually took the head coaching job at Western Michigan the day before the first round started. So it was a hard meeting, going in to talk to our guys. I was allowed to finish the season, but I had committed to take the head job. And so we actually got down 2-0 in that series. And we came home to Indy, and we were playing, actually, we weren't playing at a normal rink. We were playing downtown at the Pan American Center instead of at the fairgrounds. And it was just a weird environment, and good for our guys. We found a way to come back and win it, and win it 3-2. And it was I remember going back to we played game 5 in Cedar Rapids, and it was a big win. We stayed overnight there and then made our way to Green Bay.
It never ceases to amaze me, the memories of coaches. You guys are unbelievable sometimes with the details that you guys can remember. It's just, It's phenomenal.
You know, it's funny because I haven't really thought about it either. Like we didn't even talk before this about what we were going to, and it's just kind of flooding back. But then we got to the final and we're playing Fargo. And Fargo had a really good team. And so it's best of 5. And as Blash said earlier, you have to you kind of get over the beast, you get over your the team that, knocked us out the year before, but you still got to go win it. And we're playing at the Resch Center, which is, the triple grade A facility. And Fargo comes in and beats us in game 1. So like, oh my gosh. So here we go. Now the pressure's on us. And then in game 2, they just start rolling on us. And to the point where I can't believe this just popped into my head and I can't remember the goaltender's name. I can't believe I feel bad. Massey, I think.
Massa was a goalie out there. I forget his first name.
I got to remember who he is. So
Zach
anyway,
Massa? Anyway,
I hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but he basically he scored. Like he scored an empty netter against us, and he took his blocker. He skated up to the blue line, took his blocker off, and shot it up in the air. And somebody caught a picture of it. And so we go down. We're down 0-2. We're like, holy cow! How's this gonna go? Looking for anything, and I can't sit here and say that was one of the triggers, but it was one of the triggers. And I ended up, somebody got a phenomenal picture of it. I have to find it because I think I still kept it. The glove is in midair. He's fully cocked with the goalie stick and like he's shooting it down. It is the sickest pick. Well, we blew it up life size and put it in the locker room. And that was now if you talk to players, there's probably a lot of other things that went into it, but that was one of the things for us. So we go to Fargo, and I can remember this too. Stuff's popping in my head. I forgot my suit. So Ken Walker, who was the president of the company at the time, and Brendan Bruss, they had to drive me a suit up to Fargo. And I remember I put it on like 2 hours before the game. Anyway, we go into game 3 and they're winning. And they're winning 3-2 with a minute left in the game. And the place was bumping. And everybody had the brooms. And I'll never forget this. They were live on the air, the local TV station in Fargo. And we pulled the goalie and time was ticking down and they were pretty much counting it down. And we scored with, I think Anders Lee scored. Or Reed, I don't know, it was one of those, Bobby Francis, Anders Lee, and Reed Sick. I remember the line at that time with the guys that were on the ice. And we scored with 30 seconds left. And they've got a tape of the guy live on the broadcast saying we're going to win the Clark Cup. And we're like, oh my gosh, Green Bay just scored. Place goes silent. Game goes to triple overtime. And there wasn't we had a power play in the first period. We never got one again till triple overtime. And we ended up scoring. So we saved ourselves there, went into game 4. We got a 3-0 lead right on, like in the first 5 minutes, held on to win 3-2, came back to Green Bay. And I remember the game sold out in like 24 hours. We gave $5 tickets and they sold 9,000 seats or whatever. And we ended up winning the Clark Cup. And it was just a phenomenal experience.
What's funny is the goalie's name is Ryan Massa. It just clicked in my head because when you talked about his pose, because I was with Atlanta in the ECHL, we played Orlando all the time, and he played a few years in Orlando, and they had a big bus that they drove around town, and he did that pose on the side of the bus, and it was big and blown up. So it instantly clicked. Yeah. So he's still living in that pose. So it's really funny that you say that.
I got to give the kid a lot of credit because how often do you bury an empty netter in the playoffs as a goaltender? And he got excited, which I would have done too. But we were clamping onto anything to help us get through to game 3. And he played phenomenal in that series. He was a star. But I remember that was one of the big triggers for us.
I was at that game. I came up to scout those first 2 games. It was my first job as Western Michigan. I was coming up. I was recruiting a couple players off Coop's team. And so I was up in the press box watching it. And honestly, they go down 2-0. I know they're going to lose the game. And up until the moment that that Ryan decided to shoot his glove, I thought they were in trouble. And honestly, when they did that, the type of team that Coop had, I knew it would be a rallying point for sure. And I was like, oof, I wouldn't have done that if I were you. I thought that right away, and obviously they came back and win it. But it was crazy.
It's the kiss of death.
So Jeff, you being a goalie, like how close have you ever come to scoring a goal, or did you even try?
I don't know if, I'll say this. When I was playing at Ferris, we were going into Michigan, and Michigan had great teams back then, and we were working on I was going to start that game, and Bob Daniels was – this was before goalies played lots of pucks, but I could play it not bad. So we had worked on a breakout with a demon, like they do all the time now, sprint back, and they get open for the goalie, and they weren't going to come get the puck from me. And so we worked on this because it was our way of trying to get out of our end against, Michigan, who was real good in forechecking. We just didn't want to spend any time on our end. And so we worked on it all week. And we go to play that game on Friday, and I don't think I lasted 7 minutes. I didn't touch one dump. It was 3-0. I was on the bench before it happened. So, no, I haven't scored, but I was not bad playing the puck.
You guys both have had success, obviously, within the USHL, not only winning but sending players on collegiately, professionally. We talk about Torrey Krug with you, Jeff, in Indiana, amidst many other names that come out from that team. Obviously, Anders Lee, both having great success, Lee being Green Bay, now on with, as you mentioned, John, New York. But there's a fine line, it seems, and I always am curious to ask coaches and those who have been GMs in the league about this. How do you feel you guys tried to work that line of developing players but also winning? Because oftentimes when you develop players, their colleges are going to take them maybe the next year. So how did you address that, trying to develop but also succeed in the moment?
See, I think it goes, for me, and Coop's the same way, I think it goes hand in hand. Like, I've never felt like development and winning are two separate things. I actually think the reverse. I think the number one way to improve your team is to improve the players on your team, to help them become the very best players they can become. And that's a lot. It entails a lot. It's not just development. What is development? But it's not like just skill development. It might be them learning how to play the right way. It might be them learning how to be a great teammate. It might be them learning how to work every single night. But I think any coach can kind of get a team on the same page in a month or so. Like, it doesn't take long to implement systems and get on the same page. If you want your team to push your ceiling upwards, you got to develop your players. You have to help your players become the best they can be. So I've always felt those two things went hand in hand. I can tell you, like, does it benefit you in the USHL at times if guys come back and play that second year and you have those veterans? 100% it does. And I get that for sure. And I never wanted to see a guy go somewhere where he wasn't ready for that test. And so, those are some of the advice that you give to players. But, like, Torrey Krug is a good example. He came in the league, wasn't drafted in the USHL, not the NHL, wasn't drafted in the USHL. We brought him to our trial camp. He made our team. And I think a lot of people were surprised that after one season in the league as a senior in high school, he went on to Michigan State. But I will say that I had conversations with people. I said, I don't know if he's ready or not. Like, I don't know that answer, but what I know for sure is he's got moxie and confidence that are going to carry him through. And so I wasn't super worried with that particular player, and everybody's a little bit different in terms of when their timeline is to leave to the next level. But I think development and winning go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. Like, we had the mentality that like, we never sat there and ever told players, oh my God, you got to stay, like, go another year from now. Like, we never said that. We felt that we built a good enough program. We had enough confidence in ourselves that if a player wanted to stay, he would have just stayed. And we were all about, we would promote guys. We wanted our guys to go to school. We used to keep tabs and say, could you imagine if we could get all 23 guys on our roster college committed? How sick would that be? Like, that was one of our big things. And so we just had that feeling that if you win and your players go to college, guys are going to want to come to your program, and it's not going to matter. And it's kind of as a John Calipari in Kentucky, he kind of has this mentality of, I don't care if the NBA takes my guys after their freshman year. I'm just going to reload and go get more. And we kind of had that mentality with us and our team and how we built them, that we were proud when our guys went. We wanted our guys to move on. It was great to be able to turn on college games and watch your players succeed. And that's a big part of it. But yeah, you can't go into the USHL and development leagues and have that attitude that it's all about me. It's all about, making sure as a coach you have success, because in the end, your players will see through it. People are going to see through it, and you as a person yourself aren't going to advance. Part of being in coaching, and especially at the amateur levels, is you're doing it because you love it, and you're doing it to help other players out. And I go to bed every single night and sleep peacefully knowing that we did everything we possibly could to advance our players and put them in positions to succeed in the schools they wanted to go to. And it was one of the more gratifying parts of the whole process of being the USHL. And the winning the championships was just, that was the icing on the cake.
No, I think I'm good.
Pause. If I don't say hi to my buddy Jeff Mitchell in Green Bay, he'll be choked. So I know Mitch reached out to me about doing this podcast. So I got a little shout out to my boy Mitch.
It's an excellent segue to my next question, because I was going to refer to Jeff as a source, but you mentioned lacrosse earlier, John, and this source, now uncovered as Jeff Mitchell told me, that he believes you might be the leading scorer in the history of Hofstra University lacrosse. Is that true or false?
That is false, but I like the fact that Jeff is pumping my tires. No, I had a pretty good career there. I think I had a good career. I can't. I'm nowhere near one of the top scorers by any means, but I had my moments at the school, and we were. When I played there, we went again. We were kind of a bottom dweller when I got there, and we left. We were a top 15 team in the country, and it's funny. My coach now my coach then, who was my coach at Hofstra, I think he's the winningest coach in college lacrosse now. He coaches at Duke, and so we keep in touch, but no, I can't sit here and say I was even close to the leading scorer at Hofstra.
Lastly, for me, guys, how have you both seen the USHL change since your time coaching in it? What stands out to you about, is there a difference from, again, like 2009, 2010, and when your tenure in the league was, to what we're seeing now, 2019, 2020?
There's one big one is the fighting. Like 100%. I couldn't even garner to look at how many fighting majors we had, and it was from what the rules have just completely taken it out of the game. But yeah, that to me is by far the biggest. I don't know, Jeff, what you think.
No, I mean, that's certainly true, and nobody would know that better than you. But it's also gotten, like, even during our time, right, kind of towards the end, there was a push for it to be a little bit younger. I think it's gotten younger. I don't know that. We don't live in that world every day. I will say I had a conversation. I talked to a group of USHL coaches on a webinar a couple of weeks ago. So I was just asking a few of my buddies how are the coaches in the league, and a couple of them said to me they're as good as strong a coaching group as the league's seen in a long time. And I just think, throughout the course of the history of the USHL, it's really been a coach-driven league, and I think that's a big reason why the league has had such a success level that it has. And to hear that there's a ton of strong coaches in the league now is awesome. Certainly anchored by guys like Mark Carlson and PK O'Hanley, who've won over and over, Scotty Owens, all those guys. I'll miss lots of names, but the coaches in the league, from what I understand right now, and certainly the ones I know are excellent. So that part has kind of stayed steady. But for me, probably too, it's getting younger. And then, like Coop said, I think hockey in general, the fighting's way different.
How about our Ferris boy, Cody Chupp?
Cody Chupp, correct. Cody Chupp as well, yeah. So again, like that, it was a kind of a blanket statement that was said to me literally 3 weeks ago, how strong the coaches are, which I think is great.
Well, I just want to thank you guys again, because this was awesome. This was a great first episode, and I know you guys are two of the hardest working guys in the National Hockey League. That's why you're there, and that's why you've won it pretty much every level you've been at. So we really appreciate you take time out of your quote unquote busy days and spending some time with us.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys.
Well, Ben, that was awesome.
I don't even know if awesome does it justice. I don't think any of us could have thought that was going to go as well as it did, at least for our first show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, our first official having guests on show. And I mentioned it before we played the interview for the listeners. I go back to the fact that, they were laughing, they were going back and forth. The banter was great. They were ribbing each other a little bit. To have that, as someone who is a frequent listener to podcasts, other podcasts, not just our own, when you can tell the guests are having a great time, the listeners usually are too. And unless John and Jeff are both better actors than we know, they seem like they were having a darn good time. So that was a treat. And I really liked what they had to say about, their time in the USHL. And I think that's the common thread that we're starting to find the more of these interviews that we do, is the fact that none of the people that we talk to feel they would be where they are now without their time that they spent in this league, whether it be coaching or playing. Clearly, not only this league, the model of it is development-based for the players, but it's certainly development-based for the coaches. I'd like to argue it's development-based for media members as well.
It's 100% the case.
And so that, to me, is a special snippet of this interview that I'll remember, is just how much passion that everybody that we've run into so far has for this league. And it definitely makes me proud to be a part of it, and I know it does for you as well, Chris.
Yeah, 100%. And you can tell why these guys are in the NHL. They're so smart. They're so the way they talk. I mean, this is how their pregame speeches go. They're both quote unquote player coaches. I mean, they're relating to the players. They relate to the fans. Like, I know, John Cooper. When I was with Atlanta, we went up to Nashville, and I had a terminally ill kid from Northern Ireland, Ethan. I know a lot of you guys know Ethan in the hockey world, but he came over and visited. We took him up to Nashville, and John Cooper met us in the lobby of the hotel out of his day on a game day when, everybody goes and naps or preps. He took an hour and just sat down and talked to Ethan. Like, he's an incredible human being. I've heard great stories about Blashill too, from all the people that have come across him. I mean, they're incredible human beings. You wish them all the best. And, we can't thank them enough for the awesome interview that they gave us. And I can say with full confidence, both of them are going to win a Stanley Cup on a coaching staff at some point. I would be shocked if they retired and didn't. I can say that just from knowing from, talking to people that have worked with them in the past, and how hard of work ethics they have, and seeing firsthand on a couple occasions how smart of people they are.
How about the memories too, right? No wonder they're coaches, because the details that they have clearly ingrained into their mind, and not on purpose, but some of the abilities both of those guys had to, and then they mentioned it in the interview, that they didn't sit back and rehearse and get on the phone with each other before this interview was scheduled to say, what am I going to say? Things were just popping up into their minds. The Ryan Massa photo in the Green Bay locker room, I mean, that was incredible. Like, I was brimming as wide as I've smiled since I've been locked in my house for the last 3 weeks. I mean, that was just a treat.
Well, I mean, if they ever decide they don't want to coach, which I highly doubt, they could easily be broadcasters. I don't know if they'll ever have to prep, because they have it all in their head.
No doubt.
I have to work my tail off to remember stuff for a broadcast, and these guys were just ripping facts from 2009 like it's nothing. I think Coop, if he stayed on long enough, he would have told us his stats from the legal Eagles.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, yeah. And frankly, they were so gracious with their time. So, we can't thank them enough for the time that they gave us. We went well over what I think we allotted for, but that's a good sign,
that's
right?
Yeah.
And so also
we never have anything else. No one has anything else to do.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. A big thank you, Jeff Mitchell from Green Bay, who helped set that interview up with John. Also, Bill Wickett of Tampa Bay, who was a big component. I know Brent and he connected before this to make sure that we were obviously good to roll with this. So a big kudos to Bill and Jeff for helping us get that interview done. And we sure hope that the fans at home enjoyed it. And I don't want to give it a full guarantee, but chances are I think that the fans are going to leave this first one very happy.
For sure. The good news, that was a great first ever U-Show podcast, or the reincarnation of the U-Show podcast. The bad news is next week we got to follow that up. So we'll see what we can do and do our best. That one's going to be tough.
Set the bar high.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. We're going
to keep resetting the bar, right?
We're going to continue to set the bar high for you guys, the fans, because we miss you and we want you to have the best podcast possible. Anything else for us?
That does it for me.
Just a reminder, if you have any ideas for guests or ideas for the show, you want us to do some fun stuff and embarrass ourselves, we don't care. Give us the ideas on Twitter at USHL everywhere. We would love it. And, we hope that you can stay tuned, and hopefully we can make this interactive at some point, answer your questions on the air and fun stuff like that. So thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to John Cooper and Jeff Blashill for joining us. Thanks to Ben Gisselson and Brent Meskey for all the hard work they're doing to be a part of this. So I'm Chris Treft, and this was the U-Show Podcast.
This is the U-Show Podcast.